Jack Michaels joins the Dynasty, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, Jack.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I mean, it's been a wild and wacky season, a wild and wacky year. Been really enjoying your commentary this year. It's been super cool to see you doing the TV. How about you?
You know what? It's been a great year. I've, obviously the club has been good. So everyone's going to sound better when the club wins. I've enjoyed, my work on TV, but I've also, been happy to do the games on the radio when it's a national game. So I actually think in some respects it's kept me sharp on both mediums. And so, for that, I'm really grateful for the opportunity, but also, very much looking forward to the playoffs. This is a time of year that I have not had the opportunity to really enjoy on a regular basis since I've been here. So for me, I'm extremely excited about the second season about to start.
Yeah, me as well. I'll be honest. I've been really impressed with your work this year. I feel like there's definitely been an extra element of joie de vivre in it that I've really enjoyed. Like I think that even ties to the team as well. Like the team itself has more joie de vivre, and yes, part of that is the success, but I think also just they're growing into a newfound kind of confidence, a resilience, a maturity, a toughness. I think we're looking at a different team right now, and then it's taking me basically the entire regular season to spiritually and psychologically prepare for the fact that my team is a great team.
Boy, that's deep.
A great team. Yeah.
you've really gotten deep into this. I also think what you've heard maybe, indirectly, even though there's no fans in the building, which of course is still a huge drag.
Yeah.
But I think I have an appreciation for what I do. It's a kind of tired old cliche that a lot of people have fallen back on during the pandemic, but I think there's really a kernel of truth to it. Is just I'm relieved to be, back doing what I do, and even though it's not, especially on road games where you're calling games off the monitor, it's for that 3-hour window. I do feel kind of lost in the game and not worried about kind of what's going on in the outside world. So I think that's the other kind of element that I'd have to admit has been part of it. Just relieved to be back at work and doing what I love to do.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can actually sympathize with that. I think with being in quarantine and maybe you're not working, maybe things are on pause, you're kind of languishing, just getting to go back into work or getting to go and spend your time doing something where you're just in that state of flow and you're not thinking and you just are, is huge. And I'm glad to hear it. Like, yeah, it's been a hell of a season, and I think you and all the other guys doing the broadcast have done a hell of a job under pretty difficult circumstances. But so would you say, like, when they said, okay, we're going to do an all Canadian division, is this the result that you kind of expected? Like, was it as exhilarating as you expected?
Well, there were spots of games throughout the year that had the same type of, intensity that I might have anticipated. The only thing that didn't materialize, and, the order of finish was almost, bang on in terms of what I thought it would be, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. I know I got the top 3 of the 4 right. I'm not sure I got the third place team right. I can't remember whether I had Winnipeg in or out, but I had Edmonton or Toronto, Edmonton 1-2 in that order, and I had Montreal in. But here's what I think, we did miss, is that the top 4 were basically set about a month ago.
Yeah.
The only thing that didn't materialize that I was hoping for was I really thought the battle for the 3-4 spots would be more engaging than it turned out to be. So that's, I think, if you were gonna nitpick about how the regular season went in the North Division, I just thought the last month would be a furious, just absolute dogfight to the finish.
Mm.
I really thought you might have 4 teams competing for 2 spots, and it did not turn out that way. So that's where I think the regular season lacks some intensity just in the last few weeks, in the sense that there was an inevitability set by the 4 spots. And, some of that may have had to do with Vancouver's COVID layoff, although, they weren't having a very good year at the time of the COVID layoff. And I'm not sure their record would be much different, quite frankly.
That's probably true. Yeah, I think I was also, I think it's been a good regular season, but I was expecting, or maybe in my, when someone tells you, Santa Claus is real and he's taking you to Disneyland, your imagination runs wild. So when they told me about the Northern Abstraction, the Northern Division, whatever you want to call it, I was like, oh man, the rivalries are going to be so intense. There's going to be all this bad blood. There's going to be like 5 fights a game. And, I think probably because of all the complexity of the world that's kind of swirling around everybody, and no fans in the building is a factor. I don't know if those rivalries ever really emerged that much.
Well, the demands of the schedule, for one. That's the other thing is, let's say you didn't have any COVID situation. You were scheduled to, what was it? It was like 56 games in roughly 109 days. Like,
yeah.
When you don't have a schedule that allows for a certain degree of recovery time, your body just can't stand up to that kind of, physical intensity over a 56 game schedule. I do think that the game has changed. I don't think you were ever going to see a series of bloodbaths. And again, without the fans in the mix, that's part of what gets the adrenaline pumping to those kind of levels where the physical engagement kind of rises to the fore.
Yeah.
But again, the biggest thing for me is, the last month we've basically known, even though there weren't X's besides the names, we know who was going to the playoffs. There was a clear delineation, top 4 and bottom 3. And unfortunately, with the exception of the Nashville-Dallas race, that was really true throughout the league. It was interesting to me that in all the divisions, and you look at it, outside of Dallas, Nashville, and even that was decided with a few games left, there wasn't anything that went down to the last day. Nashville, Dallas went down the last week. Everything else has been decided for the same month that the North has, which I thought was really interesting. I did not anticipate you'd have that clear top 4 for much of the year in all the divisions. I didn't see that happening at all. It almost never does.
Well, we've had a lot of parity in the league for a long time, but I think something about this year, there's definitely been a much stronger division between the good teams and the bad teams. Like there's seems like there's bottom feeders that have been well established all season in like every division from what it looks like.
Yeah. And again, I think that took away from some of the intensity you're talking about. People kind of knew where they belonged, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I woke up this morning and I was like, man, I think I'm just going to go like watch a Nashville game just to like remember what like it's like to see fans in the stands and for like a normal hockey game. I might not though. So my biggest concern though going to the playoffs right now, and it's not an easy problem to fix, but the officiating situation has me concerned. I think I said to the High Priest of Oilers Magic, shout out to the High Priest. He couldn't make it today. He was very disappointed. It's like, I said that, where are the refs going to be when the playoffs start? Because they could be anywhere. They could be in the Greek islands. I know you're not here to just pile on jump on the soapbox with me about this, but like, what do you think could be done to ameliorate the situation vis-a-vis the reffing in the NHL?
Well,
it's a hard question, I know.
Yeah, that is a tough one. You're kind of putting me on the precipice here.
Like I think of another video review.
You got to remember, you haven't had fresh sets of officials for any of these players. So as the season is worn on, not only are the players getting sick of one another, but the players are getting sick of seeing the same officials and vice versa. That's just the human element to this whole setup, the way it's gone this year. Because obviously, because of the border restrictions, you had the same collective grouping of officials, in the North Division all season long. Whereas, in a normal season, you could go 4 months without seeing, the same official or two. So,
Right.
I think to some degree that's part of it. I haven't necessarily thought the officiating was any, worse, better, insert adjective this year than any year. I will say that, for the most part, I think most of the games with lots of power plays occurred early on in the season. I think much like so many years, as we've worn on the last 6 weeks or so, it's far more likely to see a game with 1 or 2 power plays for each side. And, Edmonton in particular, I can't imagine Oiler fans are too upset, because I think they've only been shorthanded 52 times in their last 21 or 22 games. I mean, they're not getting called for a lot of penalties. So from that regard, I think most of the concern you're talking about is, how can you draw more penalties on Connor McDavid? There's at least 1 or 2 a game that go uncalled. And I would certainly concede that. And I think most people who follow the Edmonton Oilers believe that. And that, I think, will be, a sore subject for as long as he can maintain the pace to his game. So we could be looking at another 10 years of saying, you know what? In every game, there's probably a penalty against Connor McDavid that goes uncalled.
Yeah.
How's that for walking the
That's
tightrope?
great. No, I loved it. I mean,
is that the Golden Gate behind you? What do you have behind you?
Yeah, it's I'm at Starfleet headquarters today.
Oh, okay.
In the year 2250. The answer, I think, the solution is cybernetic officials that are on hovering platforms above the ice. They get a good overview. That's what I'm going to push for. We'll see. I think you're probably the voice of reason on this. It's a drum that I beat fairly often. So we'll just we'll hope that the situation takes care of itself. So here's a question for you, Jack Michaels, voice of the play-by-play man for the Edmonton Oilers. Who do you think is like an unheralded Oiler this year? Like we've got a lot of great stories. We have Tyson Barrie leading defenseman scoring. Obviously, Connor is. We could spend the rest of our lives trying to just describe his level of skill and never accomplish any kind of like accurate description. Leon Draisaitl's best passer in the game. We got a lot of role players that are contributing. Mike Smith has had a hell of a year that I think no one expected, and it's just been a revelation. But who's a player on the Oilers that has impressed you this year that you don't really hear people talking about that you think needs a little bit of more respect?
Well, I mean, you didn't mention 2 guys, and I'm not going to hold your heels to the flame, but I think Darnell Nurse has had a Norris Trophy type of year. I really do.
Yeah.
He's top 2 plus minus for whatever you think that stat's worth. He's second in goals. He's top 10 in points. Even strength points, he's off the charts for defense.
It's crazy. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, for several years, I felt that people wanted to talk about what Darnell did not do that well as opposed to what he did do well.
Yeah. And
this year, that criticism has slowly dropped off because there's not any area of the game that he hasn't excelled at. I mean, that's saying something. And in light of the fact that you didn't have Oscar Klefbom and his 25 minutes to rely on this year, it's all the more important that he took the strides he did. He has had a terrific year. And, I'm sure he was there on your list. So I'm not going to single you out. I think you were looking more for, a different guy. I'll mention 2.
Okay.
Jesse Puljujärvi, with the addition of Ryan McLeod, with the fabulous seasons that McDavid and Draisaitl are happening, with the gradual recognition that Mike Smith, while not the league MVP, deserves to be in consideration for team MVP, believe it or not. All of a sudden, people have kind of stopped talking about Jesse Puljujärvi.
It's true.
I think part of the reason is he's just fit in so well. And, to get 15 goals from a guy that really no one knew, who could produce while playing with Connor, who could, bounce back and forth in the lineup, who could be relied upon to be that consistent, forechecking presence on a line with whom, with regardless of whom he plays with. I think Puljujarvi's consistency the last 25 games has been great. And the production is starting to catch up with all the chances he's generated. I think he's quietly had a very good year, not just the 15 goals, but just the chaos that 6'5" frame creates for North Division opponents in the D zone. I mean, they just have a hard time dealing with the range, the breadth of space that he takes up. He is just a relentless presence. We talk about Kyler Yamamoto being a relentless forechecker. Puljujarvi does it, and he's 6'5". So he's taken up that much space, wide shoulders, draws a ton of penalties. He's been great. And then the other guy who's been playing his best hockey of his career, in my opinion, and a guy who was same draft class as Nuge, and that's Adam Larson. He has played the best hockey of his career. I think a couple of years ago, he had a death in the family.
Yeah.
That really threw him for a loop. And why wouldn't it? It'd be a devastating situation for anyone to deal with. I honestly think that had an impact on, his season that year, maybe a portion of the next year. He's been battling injuries. This year, he's been healthy. And he has given Edmonton that rarest of commodities in today's National Hockey League. A stay-at-home D-man who plays with the mean on every game and is not appreciated by any forward who plays against him. And then, to compound that, no matter who he's played with, Caleb Jones, William Lagesson, Dmitry Kulikov, Chris Russell, he has lifted their game too. And in some of those cases, notably Lagesson and Jones, he's gotten their game to the next level as NHL pros. So he has had a tremendous calming and steadying influence on his own team while being one nasty piece of business for the other team to deal with all year long. This is the best he's ever played.
Yeah, he's had a hell of a year, and I think it definitely underappreciated, definitely not heralded enough. And I think if we don't re-sign him this offseason and he's not on that blue line next year, like, we are going to feel that absence acutely.
You can make an argument right now. There's an argument to be made that of the three high-profile unrestricted free agents, Tyson Barrie, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and Adam Larson, that Larson perhaps began the year as a third priority and is now the top priority. You could make that argument fairly easily.
Well, he's also the kind of guy you need. A guy like that guy in the playoffs is even more valuable. I mean,
exactly.
It's so obvious to everybody.
He's a modern day Kevin Lowe, a guy that's forgotten about on a team packed with all-stars, but a glue guy that everyone respects within the room and everyone dreads, not in terms of the fighting aspect, but just like Halo, who wants to be, worked over, hammered in the shins and in the calves all game. And just like Halo, Adam Larson routinely gets away with it. He's got a veteran's guile. He's respected by the officials. And again, because he plays like that all the time, they're not going to call everything. And no one does it better than Adam Larson in terms of, I think, taking a top forward out of his game mentally and just from a getting frustrated type of perspective. He is an agitating, irritating person to play against if you're a skilled forward, because he's going to just be tough on you all game long. And no skilled forward wants to deal with that every night.
And he actually can skate pretty well, and he can move the puck. Like, it's a hard thing to find that guy in today's NHL. who can still keep up with the game and has enough hockey sense, but who can be a punishing defensive shutdown type presence. I mean, how many of those guys are really left?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's a valuable commodity and not one that everyone has anymore. That guy that, and again, he doesn't bring a ton of offense, and that's what makes it interesting. Because what do you see when it comes to Norris Trophy? You always look at the top point guys amongst defense, and you can pluck one or two of the top three, and they're going to be your finalists. Adam Larson is never going to be found on that list, nor am I suggesting he's a Norris Trophy winner. But in terms of defensive defensemen, he's one of the top guys in the league. And I think he brings a lot that doesn't necessarily show up on the score sheet.
Fantastic stuff, Jack. Listen, I know you got to take the kids to an appointment here, so we'll start the wind down procedure. But really, really glad we were able to have a short little Minnesota here, a little episode Ito. Really been.
Yeah, and what happened to the high priest? He talks a big game, and then he doesn't show up.
Well, like many religious officials, he does that from time to time. I'm not sure. No, he's been a busy guy, so I've been even having trouble getting him on mic. But I'll hopefully, maybe if we can get back on in the off season sometime, all three of us could have a fun convo. Any advice for the Oilers fans out there as we prepare to strap ourselves in and assemble the various sliced meats and beers and snacks that we're going to need to steel our nerves for this exhilarating playoff run?
I would say enjoy it. I would say enjoy it and buckle up, because I don't think it's going to be over quickly. I think this team has the belief system that they are capable of achieving a lot more than just escaping the North Division. I'm not prognosticating a run to the Stanley Cup final, because I think when they get to the Final Four, unless there are a few huge upsets, they're going to be underdogs. But I think that mantle suits them just fine. And like I said, I hope we get what everyone's hoping for, which is an Edmonton-Toronto North Division final. I think that'd be great for the country, for each team's market. I know what the head-to-head record reads, but in my opinion, there are more question marks right now to be had in Toronto than there are in Edmonton. And
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Okay, Jack, enjoy your day, and we'll catch up again real soon, okay?
Sounds like a plan. Thanks for squeezing me in, and always a pleasure to be on with you guys.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Yeah, anytime. Take care.
Cheers.